In the same way, if one portion of your own body is injured, then other portions feel the effects of the wound. An earthquake can be a disaster in the area where it occurs, even though its existence corrects imbalances and therefore promotes the life of the planet. Emergency actions are quite rigorous in the immediate area of an earthquake, and aid is sent in from other countries. When an area of the body erupts, there are also emergency measures taken locally and aid sent from other portions of the body to afflicted parts. The physical eruption, while it may appear to be a disaster in the area of the disease, is also, however, a part of the body's defense system, taken to ensure the whole balance of the body. Biologically, illness, therefore, represents the overall body defense system at work. I am trying to put this simply, but without some illnesses, the body could not endure. Give us a moment. First of all, the body must be in a state of constant change, making decisions far too fast for you to follow, adjusting hormonal levels, maintaining balances between all of its systems, not only in relationship to itself, the body, but to an environment that is also in constant change. At biological levels, the body often produces its own preventative medicine or inoculations by seeking out, for example, new or foreign substances in its environment that are due to nature, science, or technology. It assimilates such properties in small doses, coming down with an illness which, left alone, would soon vanish as the body utilized what it could of it or socialized a seeming invader. The person might feel indisposed, but in such ways the body assimilates and uses properties that would otherwise be called alien ones. It immunizes itself through such methods. The body, however, exists with the mind to contend with, and the mind produces an inner environment of concepts. The cells that compose the body do not try to make sense of the cultural world. They rely upon your interpretation, therefore, for the existence of threats of a non-biological nature, so they depend upon your assessment. If that assessment correlates with biological ones, you have a good working relationship with the body. It can react swiftly and clearly. When you sense threat or danger for which the body can find no biological correlation, even as though cellular communication, it scans the environment physically, then it must rely upon your assessment and react to danger conditions. The body will, therefore, react to imagined dangers to some degree, as well as to those that are biologically pertinent. Its defense system often becomes overexerted as a result. The body is therefore quite well equipped to deal with its physical stance in the physical world, and its defense systems are unerring in that respect. Your conscious mind, however, directs your temporal perception and interprets that perception, organizing it into mental patterns. The body, again, must depend upon those interpretations. The biological basis of all life is a loving, divine, and cooperative one, and presupposes a safe physical stance from which any member of any species feels actively free to seek out its needs and to communicate with others of its kind. Give us a moment. It is fashionable to believe that the animals do not possess imagination, but this is quite erroneous belief. They anticipate mating, for example, before its time. They all learn through experience, and despite all of your concepts, learning is impossible without imagination at any level. In your terms, the imagination of the animal is limited. Theirs is not merely confined to the elements of previous experience, however. They can imagine events that have never happened to them. Man's abilities in this respect are far more complicated, for in his imagination he deals with probabilities. In any given period of time with one physical body, he can anticipate or perform an infinitely vaster number of events, each one remaining probable until he activates it. The body, responding to his thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, has much more data to deal with, therefore, and must have a clear area in which concise action is possible. Take your break. Thank you. 1109. The body's defense system is automatic, and yet to a certain degree it is secondary rather than primary system, coming into mobilization as such only when the body is threatened. The body's main purpose is not only to survive, but to maintain a quality of existence at certain levels, and that quality itself promotes health and fulfillment. A definite biologically pertinent fear alerts the body and allows it to react completely and naturally. You might be reading a newspaper headline, for example, as you cross a busy street. Long before you are consciously aware of the circumstances, your body might leap out of the path of an approaching car. The body is doing what it is supposed to do. Though consciously you were not afraid, there was a biologically pertinent fear that was acted upon. If, however, you dwell mentally in a generalized environment of fear, the body is given no clear line of action, allowed no appropriate response. Look at it this way. An animal, not necessarily just a wild one in some native forest, but an ordinary dog or cat, reacts in a certain fashion. It is alert to everything in its environment. A cat does not anticipate danger from a pinned dog 4 blocks away. However, nor bother wondering what would happen if that dog were to escape and find the cat's cozy yard. Many people, however, do not pay attention to everything in their environments, but through their beliefs concentrate only upon the ferocious dog 4 blocks away. That is, they do not respond to what is physically present or perceivable in either space or time, but instead dwell upon these threats that may or may not exist, ignoring at the same time other pertinent data that are immediately at hand. The mind then signals threat, but a threat that is nowhere physically present, so that the body cannot clearly respond. It therefore reacts to a pseudo-threatening situation and is caught between gears, so to speak, with resulting biological confusion. The body's responses must be specific. The overall sense of health, vitality, and resiliency is a generalized condition of contentment brought about, however, by multitudinous specific responses. Left alone, the body can defend itself against any disease, but it cannot defend itself appropriately against an exaggerated general fear of disease on the individual's part. It must mirror your own feelings and assessments. Usually now, your entire medical systems literally generate as much disease as is cured. For you are everywhere hounded by the symptoms of various diseases and filled with the fear of disease, overwhelmed by what seems to be the body's propensity toward illness. And nowhere is the body's vitality or natural defense system stressed. Private disease then happens also in a social context. This context is the result of personal and mass beliefs that are intertwined at all cultural levels, and so to that extent serve private and public purposes. The illnesses generally attributed to all different ages are involved. Those of the elderly, again, fit in with your social and cultural beliefs, the structure of your family life. Old animals have their own dignity, and so should old men and women. Senility is a mental and physical epidemic, a needless one. You catch it because when you are young, you believe that old people cannot perform. There are no inoculations against beliefs. So when young people with such beliefs grow old, they become victims. The kinds of diseases change through historical periods. Some become fashionable, others go out of style. All epidemics, however, are mass statements, both biologically and psychically. They point to mass beliefs that have brought about certain physical conditions that are abhorrent at all levels. They often go hand in hand with war and represent biological protest. Whenever the conditions of life are such that its quality is threatened, there will be such a mass statement. The quality of life must be at a certain level so that the individuals of a species, of any and all species, can develop. In your species, the spiritual, mental, and psychic abilities add a dimension that is biologically pertinent. There simply must be, for example, a freedom to express ideas, an individual tendency, a worldwide social and political context in which each individual can develop his or her abilities and contribute to the species as a whole. Such a climate depends, however, upon many ideas not universally accepted, and yet the species is so formed that the biological importance of ideas cannot be stressed too strongly. More and more, the quality of your lives is formed through the subjective realities of your feelings and mental constructions. Again, beliefs that foster despair are biologically destructive. They cause the physical system to shut down. If mass action against appalling social or political conditions is not effective, then other means are taken, and these are often in the guise of epidemics or natural disasters. The blight is wiped out in one way or another. Such conditions, however, are the results of beliefs which are mental, and so the most vital work must always be done in that area. My heartiest regards and a most fond evening. I'm going to interject here right now and say something about the current situation in our world, where there are so many people who don't have all that they need. The difference between the rich and the poor is so vast. And it seems to be that our politicians are making it even easier for the rich and even harder for the poor. And right now, at this very moment that I'm speaking, there's protesters in Turkey protesting the condition, such as I mentioned, between the rich and the poor, and the lack of them being able to even make anything of their life for the fact that they're so poor. And it seems the system keeps them that way. And even now, I just watched last night, something's going on in Brazil where the people are really mad. And they said it was over the fare of catching the bus going up. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. That was just the straw that broke the camel's back. And those people are protesting and taking to the streets. And those that don't want to give of their abundance to these people are using the police forces to do all kinds of horrible things to them. Shooting tear gas at them. Some of them even dying from tear gas capsules breaking on their bodies, on their heads or something. It's just like a gunshot. And they're firing rubber bullets, which really hurt too. And what was oh yeah. Okay, so point I'm trying to make is this. While we don't want to give people the things they need, and we want to take away the programs that help them, well, I'm really talking a lot about conservative Republicans, especially some that are very religious, that think people don't deserve any good things. Well, what is happening? We're having weather patterns that are making it even more vital that they have even more than just food or assistance. We're having weather patterns that are taking out people's homes and everything they have, and now they really need help. And now the government has to step in and help them get back on their feet because they have nothing then. Even the ones who weren't just the on the low rung, it hits them all, the rich and the poor and the in between. So it's like the weather patterns are saying, you think you don't want to take care of others? Well, with the food stamp programs or with the Head Start thing for the children and all that, well, here, take care of this. And the weather just devastates people's homes. And then a lot of assistance is needed then. So it's like, okay, the weather has stepped in and made a point. And maybe people made this possible by the mass thoughts of all the people who say, oh, those are the people who are just takers and they're just taking too much, and the rich want to run off and not pay any taxes and store their money in overseas bank accounts where they don't have to pay any interest or pay any taxes on it, and they're doing worse things when they have the means of helping the situation, but they're not. And I'm not saying all of them. Some of them are helping. We do have some really rich people who are very generous, but the majority of them just step all over the poor and get the congressmen and politicians to do their bidding, even if it hurts the environment or people. So, reading this, I'm thinking this is very pertinent for today because we'll pay the price if we continue in that vein. We'll pay the price by our weather and disasters like tornadoes, maybe even volcanoes and earthquakes and tsunamis and fires and everything else. Saying, okay, you don't want to help, now you're going to have to help even more because now these people have nothing. And so this is very interesting, that reading this about mass disasters and how we are part of causing what affects us. Because a lot of people, they hear Pat Robertson saying, oh, it's the people's fault that the Lord just punished them because they did this or that, that disregarded the Lord and his interpretation of how we are to serve God. But while he's wrong about that, because he doesn't understand God in the first place, we do affect the weather. And I've always contended that we do, that we affect the weather because of our conditions, that we, en masse, all predict something and talk it up. And your words eventually will take form and cause weather patterns, I do believe. Of course, that's just my conjecture, and I can't prove it for real. But I just wanted to add that little note. Let's see, I'm at 18 minutes. I could read a little more. Okay, Seth ended the session as abruptly as he had started it. Jane was doing so well, delivering the material for him at a steady, intent pace that I expected her to continue for some little while. She said the session stopped because I asked Seth to repeat the word vital just above, which I hadn't understood the first time. Oh. In this, such conditions, however, are the results of beliefs which are mental, and so the most vital work must always be done in that area. Oh, that just goes further with what I was saying. We have to quit predicting and lamenting something that hasn't happened yet and building it up so that it fulfills itself like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because we believe it so strongly we help bring it about. Jane explained that when I did this, she was already 3 or 4 sentences ahead in the material, and the question forced her to look back at what she had just said. Then, knowing it was late, even though she was in trance, she suddenly decided to close out the session. At the same time, she felt quite capable of continuing for another hour. Notes on session 804. Photosynthesis is the imperfectly understood process by which the green chlorophyll in plants uses the energy of sunlight to manufacture carbohydrates from water and carbon dioxide. This stored sunlight can then be used as food. Seth is certainly right when he says that senility is a mental and physical epidemic, considering the many millions of people who have suffered and perished from it in the past. I watched my father go through the ravages of senility. I'm probably not saying that right. To be senile. He died in November 1971 at the age of 81. See Jane's very evocative passages about him, as well as my drawing of him in old age in part 3 of her book of poetry, Dialogues. The beliefs people acquire when young can be changed, of course, and according to Seth, and the ideas Jane and I have also, this process of change would be the best inoculation there is against senility. As I watched my father grow older, with an accompanying progressive loss of memory and function, I used to wonder why he didn't consciously revise his response to life, and why I never saw any indication that he wanted to. I clearly sensed that it was possible for him to improve his beliefs about life, and that the benefits from such a course of action would be great. Nor did I merely wish he would change just so that I could avoid the pain. Nor did I merely wish he would change just so that I could avoid the pain I felt watching him deteriorate. My father's chosen withdrawal from the world was all too plain for everyone to see. In our imperfect understanding, Jane and I and other family members saw this process go on. We did not feel there was much any of us could do. Now, there's very recent discussion in medical circles that many cases of senility are caused by a slow virus infection, rather than just heredity or the traditional aging, and oxygen starvation of the brain. The hope and the unproven speculation are that eventually such an infection might be treatable medically. But either way, whether senility arises through aging or infection, beliefs would come first, helping the whole body maintain its healthy performance well into old age, or encouraging it to deteriorate unnecessarily. As I wrote this note, Jane pointed out that some of my material in Note 1 for the 803rd session is applicable here. For obviously, senility will have to be conquered by some combination of physical and or mental techniques if men and women are to live a lot longer, let alone forever. Session 805. Jane's ideas, and mine too, have matured considerably since I wrote a month ago that she was thinking of converting half of our garage into a writing room with its attendant back porch. In fact, we've agreed to go ahead with that project this summer. It will certainly be a long and noisy endeavor. Now that he's finished the front porch, our contractor is free to begin work at the back of the house as soon as possible. Good evening. Good evening, Seth. Dictation. An animal has a sense of its own biological integrity. So does a child. In all forms of life, each individual is born into a world already provided for it, with circumstances favorable to its growth and development, a world in which its own existence rests upon the equally valid existence of all other individuals and species, so that each contributes to nature's whole. In that environment, there is a cooperative social ability of a biological nature that is understood by the animals in their way and taken for granted by the young of your own species. The means are given so that the needs of the individual can be met. The granting of those needs furthers the development of the individual, its species, and by inference all others in the fabric of nature. Survival, of course, is important, but it is not the prime purpose of a species, in that it is a necessary means by which that species can attain its main goals. Of course, a species must survive to do so, but it will, however, purposefully avoid survival if the conditions are not practically favorable to maintain the quality of life or existence that it considered basic. A species that senses a lack of this quality can in one way or another destroy its offspring, not because they could not survive otherwise, but because the quality of that survival would bring about vast suffering. For example, so distorting the nature of life as to almost make a mockery of it. Each species seeks for the development of its abilities and capacities in a framework in which safety is a medium for action. Danger in that context exists under certain conditions, clearly known to the animals, clearly defined. The prey is known, for example, as is the hunter. But even the natural prey of another animal does not fear the hunter when the hunter animal is full of belly, nor will the hunter then attack. There are also emotional interactions among the animals that completely escape you, and biological mechanisms so that animals felled as natural prey by other animals understand their part in nature. They do not anticipate death before it happens, however. The fatal act propels the consciousness out from the flesh, so that in those terms it is merciful. During their lifetimes, animals in their natural state enjoy their vigor and accept their worth. They regulate their own births and their own deaths. The quality of their lives is such that their abilities are challenged. They enjoy contrast, that between rest and motion, heat and cold, being in direct contact with natural phenomena, that everywhere quickens their experience. They will migrate if necessary to seek conditions more auspicious. They are aware of approaching natural disasters, and when possible will leave such areas. They will protect their own, and according to circumstances and conditions, they will tend their own wounded. Even in contests between young and old males for control of a group, under natural conditions the loser is seldom killed. Dangers are pinpointed clearly so that bodily reactions are concise. The animal knows he has the right to exist and a place in the fabric of nature. This sense of biological integrity supports him. Man, on the other hand, has more to contend with. He must deal with beliefs and feelings, often so ambiguous that no clear line of action seems possible. The body often does not know how to react. If you believe that the body is sinful, for example, you cannot expect to be happy, and health will most likely elude you, for your dark beliefs will blemish the psychological and biological integrity with which you were born. The species is in a state of transition, one of many. This one began, generally speaking, when the species tried to step apart from nature in order to develop the unique kind of consciousness that is presently your own. That consciousness is not a finished product, however, but one meant to change, to evolve and develop. Certain artificial divisions were made along the way that must now be dispensed with. You must return, wiser creatures, to the nature that spawned you, not only as loving caretakers, but as partners with the other species of the earth. You must discover once again the spirituality of your biological heritage. The majority of accepted beliefs, religious, scientific, and cultural, have tended to stress a sense of powerlessness, impotence, and impending doom. A picture in which man and his world is an accidental production with little meaning, isolated yet seemingly ruled by a capricious God. Life is seen as a valley of tears, almost as a low-grade infection from which the soul can be cured only by death. Religious, scientific, medical, and cultural communications stress the existence of danger, minimize the purpose of the species or of any individual member of it, or see mankind as the one erratic, half-insane member of an otherwise orderly realm of nature. Any or all of the above beliefs are held by various systems of thought. All of these, however, strain the individual's biological sense of integrity, reinforce ideas of danger, and shrink the area of psychological safety that is necessary to maintain the quality possible in life. The body's defense systems become confused to varying degrees. I do not intend to give a treatise upon the biological structures of the body and their interworkings, but only to add such information in that line that is not currently known and is otherwise important to the ideals I have in mind. I am far more concerned with more basic issues. The body's defenses will take care of themselves if they are allowed to, and if the psychological air is cleared of the true carriers of disease. And so I will end that part and begin with Chapter 2 in my next session.